A quick disclaimer before we begin, the PEMF podcast does not contain any medical advice, and the content provided is for informational purposes only. If you have any health concerns, please visit a healthcare professional. Welcome back to another episode of the PEMF podcast, and today we're excited to be joined by a fitness expert, biohacker and entrepreneur, Kris Gethin. You may know Kris from his Instagram, his transformative fitness programs, chain of Kris Gethin gyms, or one of his many other ventures. Years of experience in the fitness industry and passion for optimizing health, Kris is here to share his insights and thoughts on all things health, nutrition, fitness, recovery, biohacking, and of course, PEMF. We've got a lot to squeeze in. So, Kris, can you introduce yourself, please, and just give our audience a little bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much for the introduction and for having me on the show. So the accent comes from Wales. I grew up in Wales on a farm, basically. And I was racing motocross for a big portion of my life up until, from like the age of 6 to 20. And it was through injury I found weight training via physiotherapy. Because I had, it's funny, I only just had a DEXA scan yesterday. And my wife said, God, is that normal? Because, obviously, did you know it's like that? Is my spine. I've got a severe curvature of my spine. I thought she'd seen x-rays of it before. But that what prompted me to get into physiotherapy to alleviate myself of the pain. And that's what then ventured into weight training because I found a new identity. I felt so much better. It was very therapeutic for me. Of course, the health benefits came with it as well, but that was the main, I guess, driving force to begin with. And then, I enjoyed that so much. I decided to start competing in natural bodybuilding. I went to college for 3 years to study international health and sports therapy, which then got me work overseas. So I started in 99 working on cruise liners around the US, Bahamas, Mexico, etc. And then I decided after a contract there on the ship, I thought I'd prefer to actually be on solid land. And I decided to go to Australia. I loved the thought of being in Australia. I knew some people there from being on the cruise liners and moved to Australia for a little while. I then started competing more in natural drug-tested bodybuilding shows. And I was one-on-one training people over there. And about 2 years after that, I saved enough money to purchase my own gym. And that was in 2003. And what I really enjoyed, doing the one-on-one training, but I started wanting to reach out to more people. And back then we didn't really have the internet, but we had magazines, publications. So I started submitting content to magazines around the world, basically, and they started getting published. And I found that I thoroughly enjoyed that. So I decided I'm going to give up everything and see if I can do this full time. So I sold the gym, left, went to Venice, California, the mecca of bodybuilding, to try to get a contract where I could do that for a living. And after 6 months, I got a photographer's and writer's contract with Weeder Publications while I was living in LA. So I did that for a few years. I published my own magazine then for 2 years, called Caged Muscle, because I love MMA fighting and I love bodybuilding. So it was like the perfect combo of providing both in this publication. And at that time, I was doing a little bit of freelance work for other platforms, including bodybuilding.com. And I got flown to Boise, Idaho, where I am now, to interview as the editor-in-chief of bodybuilding.com. I got that position, and that's what brought me here, basically. But after some years, I went to the UK for a little while. Then I went to India because I'd produced a book. I had a book signing to do. This is 2011, I think it was. And that book ended up in the hand of like a celebrity over there, and he wanted transforming. So I decided to transform him over a short period of time, which got a lot of attention in the media. So more celebrities wanted me to train them. So I started flying in trainers from the UK and the US to facilitate that. And during that time, I could see that there was definitely a void for decent gyms and a good infrastructure, because clients would tell the trainers what to do as opposed to the other way around. So I decided to start up the Kris Gethin Gyms franchise over there with my business partner, Jag. And then I came back to the US because I was really missing, life here in Boise, Idaho, and started a supplement company. I started, doing online training because a lot of people still wanted me to train them. I'd done these things called video trainers on bodybuilding.com, and that gained quite a lot of, publicity and want for one-on-one training. Even though I was putting programs out there that people could transform with, some people just wanted more guidance, more accountability, more hand-holding. So then I started offering that as well at the same time. So that's basically from then to now, that's the update.
Yes, you've been a busy boy.
Being a busy guy, yeah.
That's what I took from that. Yeah. So taking yourself on this biohacking route, at some point you must have discovered PEMF or PEMF therapy. Can you give us a little bit of insight into when you first maybe heard about PEMF or when you started using it for yourself, or how did that come about?
Yeah, 100%. So I got into the biohacking world in 2014. I got diagnosed with mold toxicity. And I had it for a couple of years, but I didn't know what it was. And I couldn't find anybody that could treat me. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed in Dr. Spanaug's clinic in Oldsmar, Florida, that I knew there was such a thing as mold toxicity. So then I started looking at where mold was, or mycotoxins, in our environment. It was in grains, it's in coffee, it's in chocolate, it's in wine. So it's quite prevalent, and it's a neurotoxin. So that's when I started really going down the rabbit hole of detoxification, health span, increasing my longevity, started quantifying my blood sugar levels and, HRV, absolutely everything. And obviously having my biological age test done every year, get my blood work done every 3 months, just to really optimize my health span as much as possible. And then, so as I mentioned before, I've done motocross, but I've also got a lot of other injuries from other sports. So downhill mountain bike racing, surfing, had many injuries, snowboarding, in the Himalayas, heliboarding and all that stupid stuff. But I love it, and I really, really enjoy it. And I have no plans on slowing down either. And I'll use today's technology to allow me to recover from these surprise injuries. So that's when I came across PEMF. There was a clinic here in Boise called Active Health and Wellness. And I was advised, because of the knee issue that I was having and the shoulder injury that I had, I had to have shoulder surgery. So I've got an anchor in my shoulder. They suggested that I use PEMF. I'd never heard of PEMF. I didn't know what it was. And the device that they had was like a coil, a very thick coil, and it clicks pretty loud and it can jolt you when it's turned right up. So I used that with great success to my shoulder, to my knee, anywhere that I felt that I had aches and pains. Like my back does play up every now and again after a long haul flight. So it really, really helped in that regards. And then when I started studying a little bit more, seeing how it can help with reduce inflammation, how it can help with the mitochondria, allow your body to recover circulation to the brain, how it can reduce, cancer in breast cancer patients, it's just like, wow, this stuff is phenomenal. Why aren't more people using PEMF devices? So, ever since then, I've used it now for like 7 years, I'd say 7 years consistency. I feel that my recovery is so much better. A lot of the inflammation that I had in my joints, I thought was just a byproduct of weight training and me kind of abusing my body over the years. But then when I started doing this, I noticed that the inflammation had reduced and my recovery had increased and my HRV had started to go back up.
No, it's great. And how often are you using PEMF therapy? So you said you've been using it for like 7 years, but are you using it on a daily basis now? And when are you using it in your routine? Because I know you've got a pretty busy routine.
Yeah, so I always make sure that I finish everything by around 5:30, 6 o'clock. I finish all my work, I wrap up everything. That is now my relaxed time. So that could be like reading a book or watching a TV show with my wife, whatever. Usually at that time is when I'll use the PEMF. So I'm talking about a 90 to 90 minutes every day in the evening, I'm lying on the PEMF device. So I use that constantly. If I'm traveling, I will actually take the controller with me because, if I was to travel with all my biohacks, I wouldn't be traveling with any clothes. So I use the controller when I'm away. Like I had a stint in India last year and, I posted on my socials, this is the PEMF that I'm using while I'm traveling. So obviously the mat stays at home, but the controller goes with me.
And the device you're using, because we met at a exhibition, one of the many biohacking exhibitions you've been to. So we met you there, and I think the one that you're traveling with is the Accelerate device. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's Accelerate. Yeah. So I used that because I think Tim Gray may have made an introduction, and he said, "Look, these guys are the real deal. It's phenomenal PEMF." So that's when I think I spoke to you at the Biohacker Summit, maybe in Amsterdam. I think that was possibly it. Yeah, and I've used it ever since.
Oh, cool. So let's talk about your fitness side of things. I can see that you've been working with a lot of celebrities. Is that kind of your main target audience, or who do you train and what are they trying to achieve?
No, it's not my main target audience. It's just every now and again a celebrity will reach out and I'll train them. I've trained everybody from MMA fighters to Ironman triathletes, supercross riders. But I'd say the majority of the people that come to me are people that have just got out of shape. The average Joe that was maybe in shape when they were in college, but now they got married, career got in the way, kids got in the way, and they find themselves out of shape. And they want to regain the confidence and the vitality and the energy and obviously the mobility and strength that they had when they were younger. There's obviously so many benefits to resistance training, cardiovascular exercise, nutrition, supplementation, sleep, etc., that needs to be in place for people to have the enthusiasm to actually work out. A lot of people wake up, they have all these things going on in their life, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to justify an excuse this morning because I'm tired and I'm going to sleep in, not knowing if they'd actually got up and moved and got the blood flow to the brain, that they'd be a little bit more alert to actually have the enthusiasm to go and work out. But a lot of people lack in sleep these days. So of course they wake up fatigued. They make the wrong decisions because of that fatigue, eating off plan, not working out, etc. So it's definitely the average Joe.
So how many hours of sleep are you getting? I know you kind of touched on that you go to bed super early, but you was messaging me already this morning at around 5 a.m. So you've got a kind of a shifted circadian rhythm. What's the motivation behind that?
So I like to get up early in the morning before anybody can kind of bother me.
Okay.
And I'm not contactable. So, I have my time in the morning where, I'm going to use, like, for instance, my brain tap or something to help with meditation. I'll do movements. So could be cardiovascular exercise. And then this morning I did the sauna and then finished with the ice bath. I didn't do the red light therapy today. I just can't fit in everything every day and I don't stress over it. But, I think growing up on a farm, I had to wake up very early before school to help on the farm before going to school. And I just feel like I feel my best when I go to bed early and wake up early. Even though I may have the same or equal amount of sleep during the night if I was to go to bed later or go to bed earlier, when I go to bed earlier, the quality of my sleep is so much better. So that's what I'm looking at. It's not just the duration, which I try to get 8 hours if possible, but it's the quality of the sleep. And that's the main reason why I, like to go to bed early. And I just kind of like the discipline. I like doing things that I don't necessarily want to do because it has, a transcendence effect into other areas of my life. So, I didn't want to get in the ice bath this morning. It's minus outside here, but I do it anyway, and it just allows you to be a little bit more relentless and a little harder to kill because we are going to become a little bit more fragile as we get older. So we want to do whatever we can to defy that.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I've got an ice bath at home as well. And I think that's the hardest one to get into. And for its own reasons, that's why it's one of the good ones, because you don't want to get into it. And once you've done it, you feel like you've already conquered something. So, it's a great one.
Yeah, I love it.
Coming back to your fitness and the people that you're kind of transforming lives to and that sort of thing. Don't want to give away your secret sauce or anything, but What would you say is one of the most underrated aspects of training that is missed or not spoken about that leads to someone either succeeding or, completely failing in their fitness goals?
Yeah, so I'd say there's a couple of things that, people have a misconception of what failure really means when they're in the gym. So a lot of people go through the motions. I'll ask my online clients to send me videos of some of their workouts, some of their exercises or sets. And 99.9% of the time, I can see that individual isn't training to failure. Now, if they're eating healthy, they're eating great, perfect. That's awesome. But you have to give those nutrients a purpose. And that is causing inflammation by training to absolute failure, meaning that you cannot do one more rep, even if it felt like your life depends on it. That's what's going to make you much more metabolically active. Your blood sugar levels are going to be much more stable. Obviously, training with resistance helps with bone density. There's a lot of benefits to it. So that's number one. And I was going to say, dependent on where my client lives in the world. So for instance, if they live in the UK, I find that hydration is very, very low in comparison to people here in the US. You go to a cafe, restaurant, they fill up your cup without you even asking. You get refills. In the UK, I just found that, you have to ask for that water. People just generally drink tea or coffee as a way of hydration. And, the body is made up of around, 65, 70% fluid. So of course, if you're dehydrated by about 5%, so you're going to be down 5% minimum in your performance, physically and cognitively. So, it's essential that people are hydrated to have energy so they don't reach failure before they should do, or fatigue before they should.
You mentioned nutrition and food and, what these people should be eating. Are there any kind of misconceptions of what people need to eat in terms to build muscle? So someone is just wanting to build muscle.
Sure. So I think, what happens, unfortunately, is that a lot of people do rely on eating bad calories to put on weight, to put on size, especially if you have clients that are ectomorphs and, they're eating burgers, they're eating biscuits, chips, crisps, whatever. And that's just causing more inflammation. And a lot of the time, the starch carbohydrates that they're consuming are usually speeding up their metabolism even more. So they're not able to pack on muscle. I feel much like, as I mentioned before, that people believe that they train to failure, but they don't. I know a lot of people that believe they eat a lot, but they don't, in order to put on size. If you want to look like a bird, eat like a bird. You want to look like a beast, eat like a beast, and that's just how it is. Some people more than others, dependent on their body type, obviously. But, some people rely on a lot of shakes because they cannot get the meals in. And that's where supplements can come in and be helpful. Because if you cannot physically eat a meal because of inconvenience, or if you're full, then, protein shakes with some almond butter, maybe some oats blended in there, will help as well. But I'd say that's usually the biggest thing. People have very short ceilings when it comes to their abilities, but they have to practice being uncomfortable in order to attain something that other people feel is unachievable.
So it's eating the right foods. You put something out on Instagram the other day that I wanted to probe you on, and it was the fact that peanut butter is not a protein, it's a fat. So, to a lot of people, this was probably shocking news. What did you mean by that?
So, if you look at peanut butter, I remember when I first got my job at bodybuilder.com, I was walking by people's offices and I noticed everybody had peanut butter on their desks. I'm like, what's with this peanut butter? What's your obsession, especially here in the US? And they said, well, it's protein, isn't it? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because obviously I'd been competing for quite a number of years now. I think at this time, I'd already got second in the Natural World Championships. So I knew quite a bit about nutrition. And of course, I went to college to study it. So when people were saying that, I thought, what a crazy misconception this is. Of course, it does have some protein, but the fat far exceeds the protein that you'll find in peanut butter. So why is it considered a protein? It's much like you'll see some products out there, let's say, it's a cereal or a protein bar, whatever, and it'll say like 5 grams of protein. Well, I wouldn't really count that as a protein bar then, even if it said 10 grams, because the majority is probably going to be carbohydrates or fats. So peanut butter being no different, it's more of a fat than it is a protein.
No, it's good advice. Okay, so flipping that on its head, somebody comes to you and they simply want to just shift fat. So their key goal is just to strip weight in terms of just fat. What's your summary of advice with that? Obviously I know we can't go too in depth, but do you have something you can kind of like explain to people as to the key motivations for that?
Sure. I'd say the first thing that I look at because a client has to fill out a questionnaire first. I need to see what their lifestyle looks like in order for me to provide the best advice. So firstly, I notice the majority of people don't sleep enough. Of course, the longer that you stay up, the more your cortisol is going to be, which is going to create insulin resistance. You're not going to be as metabolically active. So sleep is huge, making sure that you are switching off devices, good hour before bed, that you're blocking the blue light. Should you be under a lot of artificial light that has a flicker that again raises your cortisol levels? So that's the first thing that I always look at. And then secondly, from there, some type of movement every day. There has to be some sort of movement. So that could be, like treadmill, Stairmaster, elliptical, going for a power walk or anything like that. Nothing too intense. So I'm not talking about Tabata or HIIT trainer. I'm talking about steady state more than anything, because that will allow you to maintain as much muscle as possible, if not build. So you can be more metabolically active to burn off more calories. Because if you do a lot of HIIT work or Tabata or anything too intense, again, you're raising your cortisol levels. And chances are, if you're weight training, let's say 5 days a week, you're raising your cortisol levels anyway. So you want to try to get into a parasympathetic state as much as possible, other than when you're working out at the gym. That's firstly. And then, I always try to go towards, grass-fed, humane-raised, organic, wild-caught sources of food for the clients, because, of course, I don't want to cause inflammation. I don't want anything as high in omega-6 or, glyphosate, herbicides, pesticides, etc., because I want to ensure that person has a good immune system to properly digest and break down the foods to be utilized either as fuel or as recovery. And then, I usually, it all depends on the client, but I'll usually cut out any starch carbohydrates about 4 hours before bed. Of course, if a client trains in the evening, that changes, because I know the glycogen from the carbohydrates aren't going to get utilized while that person is sleeping. So I'll usually cut it out at that time, knowing that we're trying to lose body fat, basically. Of course, there's a lot of other things out there now. There's supplements and it's peptides. I don't really go towards peptides specifically for fat loss, but there are a lot of options out there. But I feel that as long as you are consistent, not just Monday to Friday, but through the weekend as well, you'll reach your goals of getting lean. And, some people employ fasting. Like I fast at the moment about 18 hours a day. That works for some people, because they just want to have a little bit more flexibility in their diet.
I really like the way you took that answer, because so many people will think they want to lose weight, they want to lose fat, and it's solely focused around what they're eating, and maybe I should just train 10 times more than I've been training. And, I think the first thing you started talking about was cortisol levels, sleep, all these sorts of things that are the fundamentals that people completely forget about when they're trying to make themselves not only healthy, but their ultimate goal is to lose weight and that sort of thing. Yeah, so it's really interesting. We did an in-house study because we wanted to see how PEMF affects the blood cells. And I actually did it on myself. I took a sample of blood, looked at it under a microscope, and then treated myself with PEMF therapy and saw how the blood samples separated. But what I found is I did this test at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I'd been sitting on my desk for 8 hours and sitting in front of the laptop and around the Wi-Fi routers and all that sort of thing. And my blood was that of a chronically sick person. It was all stacked. It was traveling around really poorly oxygenated. And it wasn't until we applied the PEMF that everything started separating again. But it's really interesting again that this this world that we're living in is a bit of our downfall. I've seen that you're quite hot on the whole EMF side of things. So when we talk about PEMF, we've got pulsed electromagnetic fields, but the EMF, people get them mixed up quite a lot, and that's electromagnetic fields, but they're in the high frequencies. So they're coming off of Wi-Fi routers and laptops and computers, phones, all that sort of thing. But you do things actively to try and prevent those or block those in your own life, don't you? So can you talk me through that?
So yeah, firstly, as I mentioned before, I finish the day every day on the PEMF, knowing that I am absorbing, the natural eons, basically that mimics the Earth's energy. I'll finish the day knowing that I have been penetrated throughout the day with non-native EMF. So, that is always a given. Also, kind of like grounding, earthing. It's winter at the moment here, so I'm not necessarily going to take my shoes and socks off and ground myself, but I wear grounding trainers. So wherever I go, I'm walking a dog every day, I'm grounding myself there as well. If I'm traveling, I will definitely, where I'm living in Boise, Idaho, I don't feel that I have to employ as many biohacks. But if I am traveling, then I do. So of course, I use the actual the controller of the Celerate whilst I'm traveling. I will always ensure that I'm wearing the grounding shoes. So as soon as I jump off the plane, I'm able to absorb the negative eons from that new time zone that I've gone into to prevent a lot of fatigue from travel. And the other things that I'd say is, that's important for me, is especially when travel is wearing like Faraday clothing, Faraday cap, Faraday underwear to, block a lot of EMFs to obviously localized areas. And then, I'll use some mitigating devices. So I've got one right here on my desk called a Q Shield. I'll use the Vivo base. Try to unplug the Wi-Fi at night before bed. Just those are the main things that I'd say that I'm doing to kind of protect myself. And, I've got an EMF reader here. I had a building biologist called Brian Hoyer who owns Shielded Healing. He came through the house and, got rid of all the dirty electricity, let us know where there was like high levels of EMF, etc. So I had the house kind of gone through as well. And, I found that I was electrosensitive when I went to Vegas once, and there was a few of us. And when I came from there, I just felt like I had a hangover for like 5 days, even though I hadn't drunk or consumed any drugs or anything like that. And that's when I really started looking at electromagnetic fields. It affects some people more than others. If I'm staying in a hotel and it's like high EMF, chances are I'm not sleeping well that night. However, it doesn't affect my wife whatsoever. So everyone's different in that regard.
Yeah. No, it's good advice. And I'm actually looking at someone to come in and test my house soon. Because, stupidly, when I moved in, I installed all of these wireless lights that I can use on my phone and all sorts of things. And, it's all coming out.
Yeah, exactly. It's the smart homes that you have to worry about. Like, I just came back from Dubai about 4 weeks ago, and you go into the hotel and everything is electric. Everything's powered by an iPad. You can't even open the curtains by yourself. So yeah, it's places in like that. I feel it more.
So I heard you mention a device called BrainTap earlier, and I think you use that when you're meditating. Is meditation something that you're quite big on, and how much time do you put to that per day?
Yeah, so it's not a huge amount of time. It'll probably be like 20 minutes. Yes, I am a big component of that because I'm one of those people that is definitely sympathetic dominant. So, it's very easy for my cortisol levels to increase because I wake up with a lot of energy and a little bit of anxious energy. So in order to ensure that I don't become a reaction upon the time that I wake up, I want to set intention. And usually the reason why I use BrainTap is that I've tried so many times to meditate, be in a quiet room, and then just, empty my brain. I find it very, very difficult. I've gone away and done Vipassana, and of course I've been forced into it when I've done a 10-day silent retreat of meditation and there's no distraction, but I don't live in that world. So what I have found, having a guided meditation, and I know Dr. Patrick Porter, great guy. I really like his concept, and I really like his guided meditation, along with the light therapy into the ear canals and into the retina, and the binaural beats, and the meditation guidance going from one headphone to another. So it captivates me. I'll download the certain meditations that I like, so I don't have any distraction on my phone because it's going to be on airplane mode at that time. So I can play that, and I'll usually start the day for about 20 minutes there. I've got a beanbag in the other room, and I'll just lie in the beanbag and just meditate.
Yeah, no, good. And something else that's kind of talked about quite a lot these days is stem cell therapy. And I see from your Instagram that that's something you had done. What attracted you to stem cell therapy, and what did you have done?
Again, because of all the injuries that I've had, surgeries. I'm 50 years old now. I'm not getting any younger. But as I mentioned earlier, I have no plans on slowing down. I was just snowboarding this past weekend. And I love that sort of stuff. I love adventure. But in order for me to experience adventure, I need to be physically active and healthy. And with some of the injuries that I had, I think I was getting ready for an Ironman triathlon in 2017. And my shoulder was really bothering me, particularly in the swim. And I wanted to avoid another surgery. So I went and had stem cells. That was in Costa Rica in 2017. And then in 2020, I tore my tricep off the bone, snowboarding again. And so then I went to a place in Mexico because I really liked what they were doing. And not only did they do the stem cells, but they actually follow up the stem cells with PEMF, with with ozone IVs, with hyperbaric oxygen. So you have to do those 3 therapies every single day that you're there in Mexico receiving the stem cells to ensure that they proliferate, that they stabilize. And I went down there again just earlier this year. It's not something that you have to go back and continue to get done, but I encounter more injuries than the average person. So I'm like, okay, I'm injured again. I'm heading on down. I've got a torn ACL and meniscus at the moment, and I want to avoid surgery there. So I'm likely going to head down to CPI in Mexico again at the end of January, just to have it put into my knee, to again avoid surgery. And so far, touch wood, I've been very, very lucky to be able to navigate around a lot of these issues by avoiding surgery, by having stem cells. It's not cheap, but it's half the price if I were to get it here in the US compared to going to, say, Panama, Costa Rica, Mexico, etc. It's going to be over double the price, and you will not get the efficacy here in the US that you can in all those countries. And the funny thing is, which is quite ironic, a lot of these people in Costa Rica, in Panama, in Mexico are all from the US. The owners of these businesses are all US, like Scotty and Ed that own CPI in Tijuana. Scotty lives in Vegas. Ed lives in, where is he? Nashville. But they fly there constantly.
And something else that, especially in the UK, I've never come across this or never heard about this, but it's ketamine therapy. Can you give us a bit of a brief explanation of what this is and why you went to have this ketamine experience and how that came about?
Sure. So ketamine is like an anesthetic. It's been utilized as an anesthetic in the past. But what people have found, there's a lot of clinics here in the US now. So you go into a clinician setting. It's not something that's like a recreational drug. Where for instance, the place that I had gone to, I only had it a couple of times. I feel like I don't need to have it again. It did what it was supposed to do. I've gone to Costa Rica. I've had ayahuasca. I've done 5-MeO in Tulum, Mexico. I've done various plant medicine journeys, and nothing really gave me what I was seeking at the time. And when I did ketamine therapy, and this wasn't in an exotic town or exotic country or anything like that, it was in a basement here, which is a clinic, right next to a busy road. And it was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
So you did ketamine in a basement.
In a basement, yeah. But, with the therapist, you are setting the intention before you actually go into this experience. Mm-hmm. So you know what you want to achieve. And I think as long as you're in a relatively good mindset, I think it can be very, very helpful. And it was certainly helpful for me. It felt like a lot of the sludge of, I don't know, maybe some past resentment, not feeling enough. A lot of voids in my life felt like they got cleared out and filled, where I could look at everything more in equanimity as opposed to being judgmental. And, that's what I got from it. Some people go back and have it many times. A lot of people that deal with PTSD from the war, for instance, then they're regular users of, going to the clinic. But for me, I felt like I had it done twice, and I felt like I got everything that I needed from it. So I got no reason to go back and use it again.
So there's one more thing that I need some answers on, and you put this out there on your Instagram, so I'm going to have to ask you about it. But that's a coffee enema. Drinking coffee in a slightly different way. What are the benefits behind that?
So, I get a lot of hate for this. But I've been doing it every single week since 2014. So when I went to Dr. Oldsmar Clinic in Florida, and he's the world leader when it comes to, Lyme's disease, helping people that possibly have, the symptoms of Alzheimer's, but then 6 months later, they can tell the time, they can remember. It's unbelievable what this guy does. So part of my detoxification protocol, on top of the IVs, the ALA, the certain diet supplements, etc., I had to do colonic hydrotherapy 5 days a week during the 6 weeks that I was there, just to help get rid of a lot of the pathogens, detox a lot of the, improved glutathione levels, reduce liver enzymes, etc. So started doing that, and I thought, well, of course, he would have had me there 6 months if he had it his way, because of the toxicity overload that I had in my body. And there's only at a certain speed you can collate a lot of these toxins out of your body before they recirculate. So he would have had me there for 6 months. So I asked, well, how can I continue this when I go home then? And he said, well, you can either go to another colonic hydrotherapy clinic there, or you can do coffee enemas. Mm-hmm. So I figured, okay, that's easier, more convenient. I'll start doing the coffee enemas. And I started looking at my liver enzymes, because my liver enzymes have always been elevated. Even since I was in my 20s, they've always been slightly elevated. Nothing alarming. But what I found over time, because it does increase glutathione levels, I usually chase the enema with a glutathione suppository, high dose as well. And I supplement with glutathione every day now. But what I found is that, number one, my enzymes, my liver enzymes, did decrease, and they stayed consistent. I traveled a couple of times and hadn't taken my travel enema kit with me, and my enzymes started to increase again. So I thought, okay, there's something to it. And I'd spoken to a lot of people like Anne-Louise Gittleman, Ben Greenfield, who utilize this practice as well to much success. So I thought, well, if it's not broke, I'm not going to try to fix it. So I'll continue to do that on a weekly basis to ensure that I have healthy enzyme levels. And one other thing, I noticed before I started doing it, I was getting a little bit bloated. And I honestly thought I had the genetics of my father's side of the family, where none of them are fat, but they've all got this like belly, and they don't drink beer. So it's not a beer belly, but it kind of looks like it. And I thought, wow, do I have the genetic disposition to look like that? But after I started doing the enemas consistently, I found that I didn't have that bloat either. But obviously I cleaned up my diet. I wasn't eating anything that was, artificially sweetened or, a lot of preservatives or anything like that. So I'm sure that helped my gut microbiome. And of course I have sauerkraut, kimchi, I take immunoglobulins, kefir, etc.
Okay. I mean, I'll take your word for it at the moment, but I'll, maybe I'll give it a try and I'll let you know when I do.
Yeah, there you go.
So we'll kind of wrap it up a little bit, and you've launched a new supplement brand. So if people want to come to you advice for supplements, obviously you have your own brand. So that's called Unmatched. Can you give people a little bit of an intro to this brand and what what it consists of?
Yeah, of course. So, being in the fitness industry for many, many years, I realized, or health and fitness industry, a lot of the supplements weren't healthy. So I couldn't understand why it was a component of the health and fitness industry. You have a lot of generic ingredients or artificial, ACE, sucralose, etc. So I wanted to create something that was naturally sweetened. I also wanted to create something that didn't have caffeine. So we have 3 pre-workouts. Not one of them has caffeine. We have a metabolite of caffeine called paraxanthine that Sean Wells managed to isolate a couple of years ago, which gives you a euphoric feeling without raising your cortisol levels like caffeine does. And of course, if you're a slow caffeine metabolizer, that could have an effect on your HRV, on your sleep quality, your ability to recover. So now your ability to perform is decreased. So, for that reason, I stay away from the caffeine. Even the energy drink that I've got here is with paraxanthine. I'm not affiliated with that company. But anyway, so that's another thing. With our whey protein, I wanted the whey protein to come from grass-fed cows in the UK because there is a lot more toxicity over here, and the farming practices aren't as good here in the US as it is in the UK. So I make sure that I get grass-fed, grass-finished whey from the UK. And, if you look at 99% of the supplement companies out there, they have ACE, they have sucralose, which of course, if people are consuming an essential amino acids, hydration, a pre-workout, intra-workout, post-workout, that's a lot of artificial sweetener that your gut microbiome has to deal with. And there's only so much that it can deal with before you have leaky gut dysbiosis, your opportunist flora has gone down, your immune system is then compromised. So we have completely naturally sweetened, and that's where we spent the majority of our time, not just formulating with the ingredients, but then trying to sweeten it so it tastes really, really nice. Because we wanted something that wasn't like, kind of chug it down and, that's the sacrifice that you have to make. We wanted to make it just as good as the sucralose tasting products out there. And that's what we've definitely achieved. People have responded very, very, very well to the flavors. And like with longevity EAAs, our essential amino acids, for instance, they're fermented. We have glutathione in there from cetria. We have spermidine from euthenin. So what I've been trying to do is merge the health sector with the sports performance sector, which, up until now, there's been a bit of a disconnect. So I wanted to kind of bring and marry those two together. And if people are consuming glutamine or an amino acid, such as essential amino acids, that aren't advertised as vegan or fermented, they're extracted from bird feathers, animal fur, or human hair, which is insane to think about. So obviously we want to ensure that we do have fermented products that, obviously are compatible to people's needs, based on, their beliefs.
And I think that's so important because, you see something that says high protein and you just assume it's healthy or low fat, you just think, oh, it's a healthy product. But so many people now are going towards these more natural supplements. So, thanks for putting something together like that, because I, for one, I'm all looking for those, more natural ingredients now. We'll put the link to Unmatched underneath this podcast as well. So if people want to check it out, they can find that. Where can people find you, Kris? If they want more advice, if they want some of your one-to-one training, or how can people find you?
It's probably best if people send me a direct message on Instagram. I'm pretty good on there. So that's at Kris Gethin, Gethin.
Excellent. And you've got your own website, haven't you?
Yeah, Kris Gethin coaching.com as well, or krisgethin.com. I've got a few websites. I've got the Gethin gyms, I've got the supplements, but yeah, people can find me relatively easy.
No worries at all. Thank you so much for your time today, Kris. I know it's really precious and it's an absolute honor having you on.
Thank you very much for having me on as well. And I really, really appreciate everything that you have done to contribute to the health and longevity sector. Of course, like I mentioned, your Celebrate PEMF has really, really helped me, and obviously it's helped a lot of my clients as well. I referred Ben Greenfield to the product. He loved it. He then referred it to people like Zac Efron. And I have a client in India actually who just had stem cells. he's using it every day. And it's really, really helping people get back into the gym a lot quicker than anticipated. Because if you are having stem cells, for instance, you should take several months away from the gym. But people that have been using the PEMF found that the recovery is just so much more optimized in order for them to get back into physical activity again. So thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you for that. And that's a great mention. So thank you to our listeners. If you want to leave a 5-star review or leave a comment underneath, we'll get back to you. And hopefully we can put you in touch with Kris if you've got any questions with him. So thanks for listening, guys.